Hi, my name is Kate from Read Learning Educational Services and Silver Moon Spelling Rules. We're continuing to practice our first two syllable division rules, but instead of dividing two syllable words, today I'm going to show you how to use those same rules for 3 and 4 syllable words. Be sure to watch our videos on the first two syllable division rules before watching this one. Now, before we get into 3 and 4 syllable words, I'd like to take a moment to review our first two syllable division rules. Syllable division rule number 1 describes what we need to do when there is just one consonant between our two vowels. Take, for example, the word robot. There is just one consonant, the letter B, between our two vowels. Therefore, we're going to send that one consonant to the end of the word. And we have the word row with a long O and bot with a short O. Now there's another part to syllable division rule number 1. We can use the word copy to look at this aspect of the rule. In the word copy, when we send the one consonant, the letter P, to the end of the word, it would make the word copy, and that's not a real word. Therefore, the second part of this rule tells us if it doesn't make a real word doing it the traditional way, go ahead and slide that consonant back to the front of the word. Now we have the word cop, P, cop, E. We have a short O because the P is now closing it off. Syllable division rule number 2 tells us that when we have two consonants between our vowels, we're simply going to do the splits, sending one to the front and one to the back of the word. Take, for example, the word trumpet. In the word trumpet, M and P are doing the splits so that the first syllable says trum and the second syllable says pet, trum-pet. There's another part to this rule, which tells us to watch out for digraphs and R's or L's in the second position. We're going to use the word pre-plant to discover this part of the rule. Notice that L comes after P. So when we look at our two consonants, P and L, the L is going to pull the letter P to the end of the word, leaving E in pre long. So we have the word pre-plant. Pre-plant. Excellent. If you want more details on these rules, go ahead and watch the videos devoted to syllable division rule number 1 and syllable division rule number 2. Now let's take a look at how to apply these rules to larger words, words with 3 and 4 syllables. If you're following along in your Silver Moon text, you'll notice that you don't have 3 syllable words until you get to part 3 of Silver Moon Set 1. That's the blue teacher's manual. You'll want to explicitly teach this process to your students so that they can use syllable division strategies to accurately check their spelling. Here's what it looks like. We're going to use this word as an example. Now, the first thing I always tell my students is to start at the beginning of the word. Never start at the middle or at the end of a word when dividing it into syllables. You're going to notice it with the words that I give you next, there are a couple open A schwas. That's because the rule Majestic America, which addresses open A schwas, is taught simultaneously with 3 syllable words in lesson 21 of Silver Moon Spelling Set 1. Therefore, we'll take a look at the word Alaska. First of all, we're going to dot our first 2 vowels. And we're going to notice we just have one consonant between those vowels. That sounds like syllable division rule number 1 to me. So I'll send it to the end. Now I'm prepared to place my first diacritical mark above my first syllable. That's a schwa. It's an open A, unaccented. Next, I'm going to look At my final vowel, I notice two consonants between that final vowel. Therefore, I'm going to use syllable division rule number 2 to divide it. Now, I can mark my final two vowels with diacritical marking. I have a short vowel in the middle and another schwa at the end. Finally, I can read my word one syllable at a time. Alaska. Alaska. Excellent. Now it's your turn. I'm going to give you this word, and I'd like you to pause this video and try it on your own. When you think you're ready, click play, and we'll go through it together. Welcome back. Let's try this one together. The first step is to start at the beginning, where the yellow star is. Next, I'm going to mark my two vowels. Now, I see just one letter in between, so I'm going to send it to the end of the word. Excellent. Hopefully you notice that we have another open A, so that A will be a schwa. Next, I get to mark my next vowel and look at what's in between. It looks like there's two consonants between those two vowels. So I'm going to use syllable division rule number 2. Do the splits. And I have the word majestic. Majestic. Easy peasy. Excellent work. We've done 3-syllable words. Let's explore 4-syllable words. Now you might notice in these words, we have a lot more prefixes and suffixes. So students will likely have to know some of these concepts along with most schwa concepts to work with longer 4-syllable words. Again, the first reminder I give to all my students is to start at the beginning of the word. I'm going to dot my first two vowels. And I notice that there are just 2 letters in between. What's interesting to note is when we're dealing with a prefix, we keep the prefix all together. So in syllable division rule number 2, where it says an R will pull the consonant in front of it to the end, this doesn't apply because we want to keep the prefix un all together. I can mark my U short. Now I'm going to look at my next 2 vowels. I notice just one in between. Well, that's easy. I can send it to the end of the word. And I'll mark my next vowel. I notice that there's nothing in between these 2. That's because able, A-B-L-E, is a suffix, and we're going to split it right before the A in able. I can mark my vowel. And finally, I'll mark my last vowel. Take a look at what's in between. And in this instance, the L is going to act like a rotten letter, syllable division rule number 2, by pulling the B to the end, because it's contained within one suffix. Like that. I notice an open A, that's a schwa, and a silent E. The diacritical mark for silent E is typically a slash through the E, noting that it doesn't make a sound. Some students prefer to mark it with an X above the E. You can choose, as their instructor, what you want them to do. I just made a really long word into a much simpler, easier to read word. It's kind of cool to tell students at this point that they have just done one of the biggest words they've seen so far. Let's read it together. I have unreliable. Bringing it all together, unreliable. Excellent work. I have one for you to try on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, try this word on your own, and hit play when you're ready to see the results. Welcome back. Let's try this one together. This word also has a prefix in it. However, I'm going to start the same way I did before. I'm going to dot my first two vowels. In between, I see two consonants. Now, there's two ways to think about it. The first way you could think about it is the traditional syllable division rule number 2, which tells us we're just going to do the splits. That works in this word. But we also have to remember that we need to keep our prefixes all together in their own syllable. So both of those schools of thought apply to this word. Sub is a prefix by itself. I can mark my first vowel. Moving on, I'm going to mark my next vowel and take a look at what's in between. Here, I have two consonants between my two vowels. Syllable division rule number 2, do the splits. Excellent. And I can mark my next vowel. Finally, I have to mark my last vowel. Take a look at what's in between. Just one. That's syllable division rule number 1. Send it to the end. Mark my vowel. That's a schwa. And mark my last vowel. Now I can read this really long word much more easily. Sub, con, ta, nent. Subcontinent. Excellent work. In the next video, we'll discuss syllable division with sticky unit syllables. Until then, be well and happy teaching.